The debt was $340,000. It had not accumulated through years of reckless spending or the slow erosion of financial discipline that eventually becomes a pattern someone notices. It had been engineered in 9 months. 9 months of private poker games in 3 cities, run by men who were not professional gamblers and were not interested in the money as money. They were interested in the specific kind of leverage a 6-figure debt creates when the person who owes it holds a top-secret compartmented intelligence clearance and flies aircraft that do not officially exist. By the time the squadron commander understood what had happened to him, who the men were, what the games had been for, and what the debt actually meant, the conversation that followed was not a negotiation. It was a presentation of one option with one alternative. The option was cooperation. The alternative was a call to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations detailing security violations his participation in the games had already produced, violations that existed independent of any espionage, that were fully documented, and that would end his career and his clearance before any debt collection conversation became necessary. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. He flew B-2 Spirit stealth bombers. His squadron had been assigned the primary deep penetration strike package for Operation Epic Fury, the aircraft that would fly the longest routes, hit the hardest targets, and depend more completely than any other asset in the operation on one thing above all others: the ingress routes, the specific corridors, altitudes, and timing windows calculated over months of analysis to exploit gaps in Iranian radar coverage, route around known surface-to-air missile engagement zones, and deliver the strike packages to their targets without the aircraft ever registering on an Iranian radar screen. The B-2's operational value, the billions of dollars, the decades of development, the entire premise on which Epic Fury's deep penetration strike phase was built, rested on a single assumption. Iran did not know where the aircraft were coming from. He had delivered the ingress routes to Iranian intelligence 5 days before the FBI found him. The investigation that found him did not begin with his debt. It did not begin with the gambling network that had created it. It began with a satellite image and one analyst who looked at 4 surface-to-air missile systems in positions they should not have been in and recognized that they were not there for routine reasons. A commercial satellite operated by a European Earth observation company had captured imagery of an Iranian military installation in the western part of the country, an installation housing mobile surface-to-air missile systems. Mobile SAM units derive their operational value specifically from their mobility, their ability to reposition between observation windows and appear somewhere unexpected. A Defense Intelligence Agency imagery analyst had been tracking this installation for 8 months as part of routine collection. The installation's missile systems repositioned regularly, weekly or bi-weekly, consistent with standard operational practice for mobile units managing unpredictability. On a Thursday morning, the analyst reviewed new imagery and noted something that broke the pattern. 4 units had repositioned again, normal enough on its face. But the new positions were not distributed across the installation's operational area in the irregular pattern that characterized routine unpredictability management. They were clustered. When the analyst plotted the 4 new positions against the terrain and ran the radar coverage arcs each system would generate from those locations, the overlapping coverage pointed along a specific vector. A corridor through the western approach to the installation that, under the current positioning, would be under continuous radar and missile engagement coverage from 3 of the 4 systems simultaneously. The analyst did not know that Operation Epic Fury existed. The analyst was not read into the program, had no access to the ingress route package, and had never seen the B-2 strike corridors. The analyst knew what 4 mobile SAM systems covering a specific approach vector looked like when they were not doing it for routine unpredictability management. The urgent intelligence note filed at 9:23 that morning moved through the DIA assessment chain and reached a senior analyst who was read into Epic Fury at 11:40. She looked at the SAM positioning. She looked at the coverage arc. She looked at the approach vector it addressed. Then she pulled the ingress route document on a separate terminal and compared. The coverage arc generated by the 4 repositioned systems addressed the primary ingress vector for the Epic Fury B-2 strike package. Not a nearby vector, not a general regional approach. The specific corridor at the specific altitude band along the specific line that the B-2S would fly to reach their primary targets. Her hands were steady when she picked up the phone. Her voice was not. Operation Ghost Road opened within the hour under one foundational understanding. Someone with access to the B-2 ingress routes had transmitted them to Iranian intelligence. The transmission had been recent enough for Iran to reposition assets in response before the satellite captured the new positions, and the execution window for Epic Fury was 4 days away. The access pool for the complete ingress route package was narrow by design. The routes were compartmented at the operational planning level, shared with the strike crews who would fly them and the command elements responsible for coordinating their deconfliction with other assets, and nowhere else. 19 individuals held formal access. Of those, 12 were at command and coordination levels with no direct operational flying role. 7 were aircrew, pilots, and mission commanders who would fly the routes, who held them in memorized form or on secured operational planning devices. The financial forensics ran on all 19 simultaneously within the first 24 hours under an emergency access authorization that bypassed standard review timelines. On day 2, the sweep of the 7 aircrew members produced one flag. Not a sophisticated flag. Not the kind of multi-hop financial architecture that previous espionage cases had used. A blunter instrument, obscured by apparent normality rather than deliberate obfuscation. The squadron commander had received 17 wire transfers over 9 months from a domestic LLC registered in Nevada. Total $318,000. His financial disclosure listed the transfers as consultant income from a private security advisory firm providing services to commercial aviation security clients. The LLC existed. It had a registered agent, a business address, a tax identification number, and had filed appropriate paperwork. It looked, to a standard review, like a legitimate business generating legitimate income. The financial intelligence team did not conduct a standard review. The LLC's registered agent was a nominee service providing registered agent functions to thousands of entities across multiple states, many of which had no substantive business operations. Tracing the LLC's beneficial ownership through the nominee service and its banking records resolved to a holding entity in Cyprus. The Cyprus entity resolved to a financial structure in Bahrain. The Bahrain structure appeared in a 2022 classified treasury assessment of Iranian financial facilitation networks operating through Gulf commercial entities. 3 hops from Bahrain to Nevada to the squadron commander's account. The financial case was established on day 2. Surveillance began immediately and built a comprehensive picture over the following 4 days. His professional behavior showed no anomaly. He was flying, briefing, conducting the normal activities of a unit commander in the final preparation phase before a major operation, performing his duties by every observable professional indicator. His personal behavior was different. On the second day of surveillance, a technical asset identified activity on a personal device, not his government-issued systems, which showed no anomalous access, that connected to an encrypted messaging platform through a relay architecture the NSA team assessed as consistent with IRGC external operations communication infrastructure. The session lasted 14 minutes. The metadata was consistent with a data transfer rather than a message exchange. He had transmitted something 2 days after the investigation opened. The content was not fully recoverable through the relay architecture, but the size and format characteristics were consistent with a document, specifically a document consistent in size with an operational planning product rather than a personal communication. The task force assessment delivered to the director at 11 p.m. on day 4 was direct. The squadron commander had transmitted ingress route data at least twice in the recent period. Once in the window preceding the SAM repositioning. Once 2 days earlier, after the investigation had already opened. He was actively reporting, on a schedule or in response to specific requests. With Epic Fury's execution window 4 days away, he would almost certainly transmit again. possibly with updated route information incorporating any modifications made to account for the SAM repositioning Iran had already executed. If he transmitted updated routes, Iran would reposition again. The B-2s could not fly a corridor Iran had had time to prepare for. The ingress routes had to be changed, and the squadron commander had to be arrested before he could transmit the changes. The execution sequence was authorized at midnight. First, ingress route modification. A parallel planning element working from the new SAM positioning data would develop alternate routes avoiding the repositioned defenses while maintaining the mission's viability. The modified routes would not be distributed to the squadron commander's access level until after his arrest. Second, arrest at 5 o'clock, before his first operational briefing of the day, at a time when his communication device would most likely be inactive. The planning took 4 hours. The arrest team staged at 4:30. The surveillance had identified on day 3 a consistent early morning pattern. A fitness center on the base where he arrived between 4:50 and 5:23 to 4 mornings per week and spent 40 to 60 minutes before his operational day began. This was a Thursday. He had been there Monday and Tuesday. The pattern suggested Thursday was likely. It was. At 5:03, the squadron commander arrived at the fitness center entrance in physical training gear, carrying a water bottle and a personal device in his left hand. The device was active, screen illuminated, an application open. The arrest team made contact at the entrance before he reached the door. He saw them. He looked at the lead agent's badge. He looked at the 4 agents behind her. He looked at his device. He turned the screen face down against his leg. A deliberate motion. The lead agent noted it. She said, "Sir, I need you to hand me the device." He looked at her for a moment. Then he handed it over, screen down, without turning it face up first. The forensic analysis conducted immediately following the arrest found that the application open on the screen at the time of contact was the same encrypted platform the surveillance had identified as his IRGC communication channel. The application had been open for 4 minutes before the arrest team reached him. No transmission had been initiated during those 4 minutes. The device showed no outbound data activity in that window. He had arrived at the fitness center with his communication device open on the IRGC channel. Whether he had been about to transmit, had just transmitted, or had been reviewing incoming communication, the forensic record did not resolve that question. What it resolved was that he had been at the point of communication when the arrest team reached him. 4 minutes. He was handcuffed and transported without incident. He invoked his right to counsel before the arresting agent completed the rights advisement. He did not speak again in any substantive way. His residential quarters were searched simultaneously. A waterproof container was found behind a removable panel in a utility closet. Inside it, printed documents. Operational planning materials, not the ingress routes themselves, which were held on secured systems and not distributed in printed form, but mission preparation products that would have allowed an analyst with knowledge of the target set and operational framework to reconstruct significant elements of the strike package's parameters. He had been maintaining a physical archive for transmission. The documents were undated in any way that established when they had been printed. The investigation could not determine whether he had compiled them for an imminent transfer or for some other purpose. His refusal to cooperate made the question unresolvable through testimony. The documents were seized. The cash found alongside them was processed. Modified ingress routes were distributed to the B-2 strike crews at 0900, 4 hours after the arrest, through a clean command chain with no connection to the compromised officer. The routes were more complex than the original planning, requiring adjustments to timing windows and fuel parameters, and the crews who would fly them had trained on the original corridors, not the modified ones. The parallel planning element had worked for 36 hours to produce routes from what remained after accounting for the full scope of Iranian air defense repositioning. The original routes had been selected over months of analysis to find optimal corridors. The modified routes were selected in 36 hours from what was left. The NSA retrospective collection review conducted in the weeks following the arrest identified 6 additional Iranian air defense activity indicators over the preceding 11 days, now assessed as reactive to the ingress route transmission. Radar activation pattern changes. Communication security upgrades at 3 Western installations. A shift in the patrol routing of Iranian air defense alert aircraft that placed them in positions better suited to responding to threats along the transmitted vector. Iran had not simply repositioned 4 mobile SAM systems, Iran had restructured a significant element of its Western air defense architecture in response to what the squadron commander had transmitted. The modified routes had to account for all of it. Federal charges were filed within 23 days of the arrest. Espionage under 18 U.S.C. Section 794. Conspiracy to commit espionage. Bribery of a public official. Aiding the enemy under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, carrying a maximum sentence of death. The UCMJ charge rested on an operational logic that required no legal elaboration. An officer who transmits the specific routes his own aircraft must fly to survive, to an adversary who repositions air defense systems along those routes, has aided the enemy in a manner that placed American military personnel in direct mortal danger. He was held without bail. He provided no cooperation. His attorneys indicated he was considering his options. The financial investigation of the Nevada LLC produced something broader than one case. The poker network that had recruited the squadron commander was not a gambling operation. It was a recruitment infrastructure, a system for identifying individuals with high-value access, engineering their financial compromise, and converting the resulting debt into operational leverage. The FBI, working jointly with the counterintelligence and organized crime divisions, identified 11 individuals who had participated in the network over the preceding 3 years. 6 held federal security clearances. 3 held clearances at a level consistent with access to classified national security information. The squadron commander was the only one of the 3 who had been converted into an active intelligence source. The network's domestic operational infrastructure, the LLC structures, the banking relationships, the physical game locations, was dismantled through civil asset forfeiture and criminal prosecution within 90 days of the arrest. The IRGC personnel assessed as having designed and managed the network from outside the United States were identified, named, and reported through classified intelligence notifications to relevant foreign partners. The methodology? Engineering debt through games and converting debt into clearance leverage, had been applied in at least 4 prior recruitment attempts over the preceding 5 years. The squadron commander was the first successful conversion. He was also the last one the network would produce. The total assets subject to forfeiture through the Nevada LLC and its linked entities exceeded $2.1 million. The $340,000 engineered debt that had initiated the recruitment was not mentioned in the charging documents. It was not relevant to the legal case. The debt had been the tool. What mattered was what the tool had produced and what had been done about it in 9 days. The B-2s flew the modified routes. They reached their targets. They came back. All of them. That outcome traced through a chain of decisions that began with one imagery analyst on one Thursday morning looking at 4 mobile SAM systems in positions that didn't fit the pattern of routine repositioning, recognizing the difference between unpredictability management and a prepared defense oriented along a specific approach vector, and filing an urgent intelligence note at 9:23. The note reached the right analyst at 11:40. The right analyst made the comparison that couldn't be coincidental. Ghost Road opened. Ghost Road ran to arrest in 9 days. The arrest happened at 5:03 when the squadron commander was standing at a fitness center entrance with his IRGC communication application active on his device, 4 minutes between his arrival and the arrest team reaching him. 4 minutes between an open communication channel and handcuffs. 4 minutes that separated one transmission from being sent on a schedule that would have reached Iranian intelligence before the modified routes could be built and distributed and flown. 9 days. The full duration of Ghost Road from opening to arrest. 1 analyst, 1 satellite image, 1 morning, 1 recognition that 4 SAM systems in those specific positions were not there for routine reasons. That recognition opened the investigation. That investigation saved the aircraft. That recognition brought the pilots home. The $340,000 engineered debt had been the mechanism. The mechanism failed because an imagery analyst noticed something wrong about where 4 missile systems were parked and understood immediately why that mattered. One analyst. One morning. That was enough.